Please discuss Dr. Cindy Russell's environmental research review about 5G wireless telecommunications expansion.
So her research review that was published in Environmental Research talks about the range of scientific studies that have been done on radio frequency, radiation frequencies that will be used in 5G, including millimeter waves with effects that range from cancer to bacteria growth to changes to DNA damage. And the study concludes that a moratorium on the deployment of 5G is warranted, and that the addition of this added high frequency 5G radiation to an already complex mix of lower frequencies will contribute to a negative public health outcome from both physical and mental health perspectives. And Dr. Cindy Russell is one of many scientists who have published on this issue. There are some other critically important reviews that have looked at 5G specifically. There was a study by that looked at real world exposures to 5G, how this will have numerous adverse effects, because we're talking about synergistic effects with toxins and pollution that we're already exposed to, air pollution, and toxins in our food and water. There are a lot of studies that have shown a tumor promotion effect from radiofrequency radiation, and a synergistic effect where you're going to get higher effects from known harmful agents, because it's the combination that makes it more, potentiates the effects. So we have a lot of that online at Environmental Health Trust. We have a section on studies on 5G that of course includes the lower frequencies as well, because 5G is going to use all the frequencies we have in place now and higher frequencies never used before. And they're going to be using different antenna types, which are really untested in terms of what the levels of exposure are. So beamforming and other modalities, which are really concerning to scientists who have published in the field.
Please discuss the 2015 EMF scientist appeal to the United Nations. Why was it important to have scientists from 42 nations submit to this review? What does this state about the level of scientific consensus on the implications of cell phones and cancer risk?
Industry will often say that the scientific consensus is that there's safety, but that is absolutely not true, because of the UN appeal, as well as the EMF scientist appeal. These are scientists from around the world who have published in the field of bioelectromagnetics, who are calling to halt 5G, who are calling for reducing exposure to the public. And you have to remember that for every scientist who has signed on to these appeals, there are scientists that are unable to, that want to. However, because of their position or their job, they are fear taking that risk, because scientists who speak out on this are attacked so vehemently at so many different levels. They lose funding. If they don't have tenure, they're not going to get it. There are many stories that we have that have been published, actually. Dr. Deborah Davis, in her book Disconnect, talks about many of these cases of scientists being attacked for speaking out on this, or even for publishing science that shows effects. So we believe that the scientific consensus among non-industry funded scientists and experts is that there needs to be a halt to 5G and a reduction in exposure until safety can be demonstrated.
Please discuss the role of distance as a barrier to wireless devices. Is there a safe distance? How does this depend on what the device might be? Please discuss the differences in space and allowable radiation levels as they relate to the different countries' allowable limits.
So distance is really important. You can decrease your exposure by keeping a distance from devices. It's not the whole picture, but it is a piece of how people can protect themselves. But what you said about other countries is also an important framework. So the United States and Australia have among the highest allowable limits for cell tower network emissions compared to many other countries. Russia, China, India, many European countries have much more stringent limits when it comes to exposure from cell towers. So you might want to know, like, what is the level of radiation outside my front door? And if you were in France, you actually could go to your mayor and request a measurement. And by law, they will provide you that measurement. In fact, for many countries, you can go online and actually get real-time radiation monitoring for different points in different cities. They're doing that in Paris, for example. You can know what your level of exposure is. Whereas in the United States, ooh, good luck with that. That is not, we don't have that kind of transparency. We need that. And we allow some of the highest, among the highest levels, depending on the frequency of radiation related to cell tower limits. So this is something that I think in the United States we can really work on, which is at least having limits that are as protective as other countries. Now, I will say that in those other countries, unfortunately, sometimes the law is not always as followed as it needs to be. And even those limits are not protective. They are more stringent, but we have a long way to go to have actually protective limits. Because right now, we have not determined, that the research has not been done to determine a safe level of exposure, especially for babies and pregnant women and teenagers. So all of that research really needs to be done. And that's why you want to replace the devices that you have with safe, non-radio frequency emitting radiation devices, and or keep a distance when you're with those devices. Don't have them on your body. Don't have, if you have a wireless printer, for example, it shouldn't be touching your body. It shouldn't be near your body in your office. In fact, what people do is have them unplugged when not in use. And then they also figure out you can actually go into the printer and you can decrease the signal or even turn off the wireless signal in the printer. So there's so many wireless devices now, from laptops, tablets, the wireless routers, access points. When I go out to eat in a restaurant, I don't sit next to the wireless devices which are around. I try to keep an eye on that. And actually, I don't go to restaurants now with COVID. We don't have any restaurants we can go to, but as things open up, keeping a distance is really important. I've seen images from India where people often will have their, they'll eat on their rooftops. I mean, I know around the country we have that, and they've actually had to put up barriers because there's so many antennas on rooftops, but in the United States, people are not aware of that. So you might be on your rooftop, there might be a pool up there, or the party room is often on the rooftop, but there might be an antenna right next door on a building, and there's not adequate monitoring to know if that's safe. Most likely it's not if there is an antenna right next door. That needs to be addressed. So, but please remember that if you're addressing any of this, you really need to have a professional to help you do measurements to make sure that you're not inadvertently increasing the radiation levels by putting up some sort of shielding. So we say distance is our friend, but we also need to swap out with safer technology and get meaningful policy change at the top, at the federal level, to protect us. That is what is needed most of all.